Imagine this. It's Friday night. Your phone is silent. Nobody texted you. Nobody liked your post. Nobody replied to your message. You feel lonely. Now, imagine explaining that problem to someone from 2000 years ago. They'd probably stare at you and ask, "What is a phone?" Then they'd ask something even stranger. How did you manage to be alone in the first place? Because for most of human history, being physically alone was surprisingly rare. Yet, loneliness itself is ancient, as old as humanity. Ancient kings felt it, soldiers felt it, poets felt it, exiles felt it, even monks hiding in deserts felt it. So, how did people deal with loneliness before social media, Netflix, dating apps, podcasts, video games, and group chats? The answer is much more interesting than you might think. And in some ways, ancient people may have been better equipped to handle loneliness than we are. But first, we need to understand something important. Loneliness and being alone are not the same thing. And ancient people understood that better than most. For most of history, privacy barely existed. Imagine living in a one-room house with your spouse, children, grandparents, animals, and possibly a few chickens who consider themselves part of the family. There were no private bedrooms, no headphones, no do not disturb mode. Most people lived inside tightly connected communities. Families were larger. Villages were smaller. People worked together, ate together, worshipped together, and knew almost everyone around them. In many places, surviving alone was nearly impossible. A connected person was protected. A disconnected person was vulnerable. Yet loneliness still existed. One of the clearest examples was exile. In ancient Greece, Rome, Persia, and many tribal societies, being banished from your homeland could be devastating. Not just emotionally, economically, socially, physically. You lost your community, your identity, your support network, your place in the world. Ancient literature is filled with people longing for home because home wasn't merely a location. Home meant belonging, and belonging meant survival. Think about that for a second. Many modern punishments restrict freedom. Ancient punishments often removed belonging, because belonging was everything. Imagine waking up tomorrow and every single person you know suddenly disappeared. No family, no friends, no coworkers, no neighbors. That's much closer to what exile felt like. Ancient societies feared social isolation so much that they built punishments around it, which tells us something important. Humans have always needed connection, but ancient people also had a powerful defense against loneliness: family. Today people say, "I need to build my network." Ancient people would have laughed. They were born into one. Family wasn't just family. It was your insurance policy, your employer, your retirement plan, your emotional support system, and occasionally your source of endless drama. Some things never change. Multiple generations often lived together. Grandparents, parents, children, aunts, uncles, cousins. When tragedy struck, people rarely faced it completely alone. Today, many people move hundreds of thousands of miles away from relatives. Ancient people often spend their entire lives near extended family. That didn't eliminate loneliness, but it made total isolation much harder. And family wasn't the only source of connection. Many ancient people believed they were never truly alone at all. Across civilizations, people believed gods, ancestors, spirits, or divine forces were present in everyday life. Prayer wasn't simply ritual, it was conversation. Many surviving prayers sound surprisingly personal. People expressed fear, grief, doubt, hope, and loneliness. Most importantly, they believed someone was listening. Whether those beliefs were true isn't the point. The point is that they provided connection, a feeling that someone somewhere understood. Ancient people also found companionship through stories. Long before streaming services, people gathered around fires, in marketplaces, and at festivals. Stories connected generations. Heroes faced impossible odds. Friends were lost. Homes were left behind. Kingdoms rose and fell. Ordinary people saw their own struggles reflected in large narratives. Stories reminded people that suffering wasn't unique. Others had felt fear. Others had felt heartbreak. Others had felt loneliness. And they survived. That's one of the hidden powers of storytelling. When you hear someone else's story, you realize you're not the only person struggling. You're not the only person who's lost something. You're not the only person who's afraid. Ancient people understood this long before psychology existed. And they didn't just tell stories, they built entire communities around shared experiences. Life was full of gatherings, religious festivals, harvest celebrations, weddings, funerals, seasonal ceremonies, public feasts. Humans seem to function surprisingly well when they're given a reason to gather and eat together. These events constantly reinforce social bonds. Even people who felt isolated in daily life became part of something larger. Modern culture often celebrates independence. Ancient cultures usually celebrated interdependence. People dependent on one another. And that dependence created connection. But now we arrive at an interesting twist. Because not everyone wanted constant company. Some people deliberately chose solitude. And even they discovered something surprising. Throughout history, certain individuals left society behind. Monks, mystics, hermits, philosophers, people who looked at civilization and essentially said, you know what, I'm moving into the desert. Early Christian desert monks spent years living in isolation. Some lived in caves. Some lived in tiny huts. Some sought complete solitude. Yet many of their writings reveal the same struggles people experience today: loneliness, fear, boredom, restlessness, doubt. Even those who voluntarily embraced isolation often found it difficult. Their experiences reveal something fascinating. Loneliness isn't a modern invention. It's not caused by smartphones. It's not caused by the internet. It's not a bug in the human experience. It's a feature. Humans have been wrestling with it for thousands of years. Ancient people didn't have smartphones. They didn't have Instagram. They didn't have group chats. They didn't have streaming services. And they definitely didn't have apps that let strangers argue about ancient history at 3 in the morning. Yet, many of them lived inside communities that naturally provided connection. Family, faith, friendship, shared work, shared rituals, shared stories. Loneliness existed, but the structures protecting people from total isolation were often stronger. And that's where the real lesson might be. The irony of modern life is that we have more ways to communicate than any generation in history. Yet, many people feel disconnected. Perhaps the real question isn't how ancient people dealt with loneliness. Perhaps it's what we have forgotten from them. Maybe the answer isn't more technology. Maybe it's rebuilding the kinds of connections humans relied on for thousands of years. Because whether you're a farmer in ancient Persia, a merchant in Rome, a monk in desert, or someone watching YouTube late at night, the need remains exactly the same. Human beings were never meant to face life completely alone. And if you're watching this alone right now, well, at least for the last few minutes, you weren't. See you in the next video.